I got the one subject line from you and then ended up getting the details a good 20 minutes ahead of time. So I am super excited about this subject as much as any person completely in the dark can be. So
okay, I'm calling us even now. All right. From this point forward.
From this point forward, all notes have to be finished a minimum of 24 hours before recording.
That's perfect. Hey, this is interesting. So our episode title today is Leadership by the Numbers. And it was interesting. I had downloaded, so Gallup does a global workplace, or state of the global workplace every year. And they did one for 2025. And I actually hadn't read the introduction to it. So let me read that because I think it's perfect for today's episode. So it says Gallup State of the Global Workplace 2025. This offers what may be our last snapshot of a workforce on the cusp of seismic change. We are witnessing a pivotal moment in the global workplace, one where engagement is faltering. At the exact time, artificial intelligence is transforming every industry in its path. While few employees have harnessed AI's full potential, its rapid advance will force every organization to adapt, whether they are ready or not. So the Gallup 12, there's actually, again, 12 questions, and it's trying to get at employee engagement. And engaged employee, so they used to do what were called satisfaction surveys. And a company I worked for years had done what were satisfaction surveys. And satisfaction really was, what is the company giving to the coworker or employee? And how do they feel about that? And at some point, start looking and saying, well, that's all great and good, but what do we get back from the employee? So it's a two-way street, right? What does the company provide for the employee, the coworker? And then what does the coworker employee give back? So engagement is really trying to get at that, and that's at three different levels. So if you look at the 12 questions, they're looking at three levels, actually four levels on a pyramid. So the two basic needs questions, question 1 and 2. So 1 is, I know what is expected of me at work. Question number 1, I know what is expected of me at work. And then question 2 is, I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. So that's basic needs. Then it goes to individual contribution. The next 4 questions, so that's questions 3 through 6. Teamwork, and let me give you one of those. So at the individual contribution level, question 3, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. And the next level up is teamwork, 4 additional questions. This is an interesting one. So at teamwork, question 7 is, at work, my opinion seems to count. And then growth, so the top 2. So this kind of reminiscent of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So it starts at basic needs, and then growth is question 11 and 12. Question 11 is, in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. And then question 12, this last year, I've had opportunity at work to learn and grow. So these 12 questions have been around for, and I don't know how many years now, Brian, but this is done not only in the United States, but across the world. And they've been looking at engagement, and they look at it at 3 levels. Engaged coworkers, partially engaged coworkers, and then actively disengaged.
I think the numbers are right around 26% of the workforce, at least in the US, is either fully disengaged or partially disengaged.
Yeah, which is crazy. So the metric was 32. So again, global average is 21% engaged. United States is 32%. So just 1/3 of coworkers are engaged at work. That means that 2/3 are either disengaged or actively disengaged from the work.
Okay, who cares? Let's say you are just you're a business owner and you're like, I don't care if I am all about the numbers. I just care that I'm pushing a profit and I'm maximizing that profit on my P&L statement. Yeah. I don't care if my employees, quote, have fun. This isn't a Chuck E. Cheese.
I love that. So This isn't about fun, right? If you read these questions, it's not about fun. It is our coworkers, employees giving back to the business, right? So that there's that two-way street. And so here's why they should care. And I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name, but he called it the tension triangle, and it's between the owners of the business, employees, and customers, right? And so there's always that three-way tension between the three of them. There is a direct correlation between engagement and performance of the company, right? So financial performance of the company and net promoter score. So if you have disengaged coworkers, they are not going to do well on behalf of your customers because they really don't care much about the business. So when you look at that tension triangle, they're disengaged. Because of that disengagement, they are not helping create and deliver value to your customers, which means if you have any customer loyalty at all, it's probably diminishing, and you probably won't see repeat customers as often as you normally would. So that tension triangle is significantly impacted by that engagement score.
Right. And so this really, really is, it is more about, it's not just about touchy-feely stuff. This is truly, do you have a workforce that is being optimized, correct?
Yeah, and I boy, those terms. Yeah, I think that I'm trying to think of a better term than optimized. I think, well, it's engaged, right? If
Yeah.
you have high engagement, you have a workforce that's working at its optimal. Maybe let's
Right.
use that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't want to look at it. It's hard because when you talk about it, a lot of companies will talk about, well, we need a highly productive workforce, and those are true things. But once you get beyond, efficiency, productivity, those kinds of things, once you hit that threshold, what else can they create? How do they create value for you? So it isn't just doing the work. We've been talking about this, right? How do you not only do the work you're doing today, how do you improve how you do that work? Right? How do we experiment and do those things? And then at some point is how do we actually innovate? And at every level of the business, we can look at levels of innovation. So a engaged workforce will, and with the right operating system, and of course we've talked about that.
Of course.
That engaged workforce with a responsive operating system will create enormous value for the company, for the customer, but even amongst themselves, right? They are much happier work. They're learning as they go. They're learning how to experiment and do problem solving. And so if you want optimal performance, if you want to see the best of what your team can create, that engagement score is telling you how that's working. And what's really interesting, Brian, this is a scary part, they've seen the biggest decrease in manager engagement and what's happening at that level. So we talk about leadership by the numbers. We're talking about most employees, most coworkers leave a business because of their supervisor. So you can have a great company, you can have a great operating system, you can have great products, great service, great customers, but if you have a bad supervisor, if you report directly into a bad leader, that bad leader can cause you to leave the company. And that person could talk to other people in other areas of the business, and they're like, what are you doing? What's happening? I mean, this is a great company to work for. So the engagement.
So what will
level,
what leads to or causes bad middle management and bad leadership for these guys that have the boots on the ground in the front lines?
You're the best straight man I've got here, dude, because if you look at literally what Gallup is saying, there's three things that need to happen around leadership. Okay. One is you need to ensure that all managers receive training to cut extreme manager disengagement in half. So they're saying training, and they're talking about just basic management and leadership training. Two, you need to teach managers to be effective coaches to improve their performance. So some managers have a natural gift for coaching, others don't. So one is basic training. Two is teach them to be coaches. And then three is ongoing development. So you can't come in and do a one and done, hey, here's our basic management and leadership training. Then, oh, by the way, here's some tips and tricks on how to do coaching. And then leave it. What they're saying is, and I've seen this myself, is you need to constantly go back and keep reviewing and training on the basics of leading and managing, and then two, on how you can be a better coach. Because in the end, Brian, the only way you're going to have engaged coworkers and coworkers that are engaged in problem solving and helping creating value for your customer is they need to be coached to do that.
Yeah.
Doing it on their own is not going to work. So if you have leaders, so essentially what you're saying is, I have an engagement problem at the this is like and I wasn't in the armed services. Thanks for everyone that has been, but they'll say that first line, right? That frontline leadership is the most critical leadership in the armed services, right? Same thing in the business. Your team leads, your supervisors, whatever that first level of leadership is, that's your most important because they have the most touches with the frontline
Absolutely.
coworkers, no matter what they're doing. So what they're
Absolutely.
saying here is the only way you have an engaged team is to have engaged leaders. Disengaged leaders talk about poisoning the well, right? Disengaged leaders, that will have an enormous impact on the team that reports into them.
That's incredible that you shared that. When I consult for organizations and we get into the HR part, the people, I call it the people problem. And what's funny is we love to talk about our resources and measure those and make sure that we're taking care of our resources, whether it's a fixed resource or it's such as a building, a piece of equipment, or if it's a liquid resource such as cash on hand, investable securities, things like that. But we forget about the human resource. And we're like, oh, that's too tough to measure. That's too fluffy. We're not going to do that. And what happens is engagement drops. And the three areas, and it was so neat to hear you say that, the three areas that I really feel passionate about are getting your team and your team leaders to become authorities, which is the number one thing that you mentioned. Make them the experts. When they feel that they are the experts and the authorities, all of a sudden that Napoleon complex goes to the wayside. There is no, oh, this is me, but this is you down here. There is none of that when everybody feels that they are authoritative and ready to go. Number two, they have to be empathetic. They have to be willing to positively communicate to their coworkers or the people underneath them. And that comes from understanding where that person is and meeting them, the empathy part. And then the third part being the accountability part. All right, this is what we're going to do to teach you more in the future, to keep you accountable and to keep you sharp. So I love this. This is great. So,
and it's interesting, Brian. So if you work in most traditional businesses, at least a physical product business, the largest cost you have is your cost of goods sold. So take your revenue, subtract your cost of goods sold. How well is inventory performance known within leadership? They know it inside and out. What are inventory turns? What's our margin on product? What's our replacement cost? What's our obsolescence? Every which way you look. And so you ask the question, why do I care about engagement? Your second largest expense is people.
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so if you turn it around and say, hey, how can I get that? And I hate thinking about it, but a lot of times they'll talk about it's an asset. But if you look at it and say, how do you get better performance? Gallup has shown this, right? Using a simple tool like the Q12 from Gallup, you can get a sense of how engaged your team is. And usually what happens is they do an annual a survey once a year at a company. And then you can do, I think they call them flash surveys, where you can do them throughout the year to get a sense of, what direction is this taking? Are we seeing improvements or not? So the idea behind this, and why I call it leadership by the numbers, is I think the smallest group you can put through the survey, I think, is 4 people. I think it's $20 each. You pay $20 per employee. You do a minimum of 4, and then you have access to Gallup's database and all the information around this. What's interesting, though, is at a prior client, we looked at the survey, and there were 4 questions that had scores. And what they do, the nice thing about the Q12 is you get comparisons within the company. So you can look at salary versus hourly. You can look at by division within the company. You can look at like companies. So you get a sense of how is my business performing against others, number one. Then number 2 is, even if you don't want to benchmark, you can just look at the questions and say, where are the areas of most concern, right? Where are the scores lower? So what we did is we took that, and again, Gallup offers all kinds of information. They have books, articles to address those individual questions. And so these are things that you can do as a leadership group in the business. So we took a step further, and we used AI and said, hey, if I have low scores in questions, say 1, 2, 5, and 7, what are things leaders could do every day? What's a handful of things that leaders could do every day to help improve those scores? So if you have no leadership development at all, and there's no real expectation, Brian, and this is a lot of companies, right? You get a team member that's promoted to a team lead or a supervisor. They're never given solid training on what they're supposed to do. They don't know how they're supposed to support the team. And if you do this survey and then say, hey, how could I, start to look at what factors could we look at, activities we could look at for our leaders to do every day that would help improve engagement for our frontline folks. And then 2, within that, we're training them on the behaviors that are good leadership behaviors.
Yes.
So, and it's starting with a very small number. So when we did this, we started with 4 or 5 behaviors that we wanted to see every day with those leaders in the team. And we put it literally on a matrix that said, here's the 4 or 5, here's Monday through Friday. And I like the term blackout bingo. If you ever played bingo, one of the games is hit every circle. The idea is, just like the experiments we've talked about in the past, we start to identify, do our leaders have the time during the day to get these things done? And then by leader, you can say, well, which is the one that they seem to be sort of drawn to? Like almost every day they'll do this 1 or 2, but there's a few that they just don't do. Well, maybe because they're uncomfortable doing those kinds of things. So you can start to look at on a weekly basis or a daily basis your leaders starting to do these behaviors. What are the ones they see done consistently? What are the ones that we're not able to do? Or it could be they just don't feel like they have time at all to do them. Well, now we can sit down and talk about that. The big win is, as soon as your team starts to see a change in behavior at the leadership level, it gets noticed and they start talking. They are going to see a difference with your leaders, and they're going to start to see a difference in the engagement with them. And that begins the change in, rapid change in engagement, both by the leaders and your frontline. Now, what you have to do is sustain this, right? So this isn't like what do they call it? The idea of the month club or the
Right.
the project of the month. This is an ongoing. You start down this path, and you start doing these surveys. You starting addressing this. You need to go out of the gate. You need to start doing something. I've worked for companies in the past where we would do these surveys. It would take months to get the information back, get it formulated, get it pushed out to the team, and then we put in these big, action plans to address this. And we looked and said, no, we can do the surveys, immediately identify where the low scores are, ask AI or use Gallup's information, what are the handful of things that our leaders could do right now to address those things and start doing them tomorrow?
Yeah, and
Literally, you can move that fast.
And it's amazing once these surveys are issued to some of your leadership and to the staff in general. It's amazing just by asking their opinion and then talking it over with them, how much progress gets made off the bat, right off the bat, and how engagement increases when people are like, wow, you want my opinion on this? Yeah, it's really important, this and that. And it also weeds out those who are actively disengaged and want to leave too. Because once you start to hone in on these answers, and then if you haven't established any core values or your, I don't like to say mission statement, I call it your motivating statement, so that everybody gets around it and is motivated by it. If you have not established that, this is a great foundation and a great starting point for it and for launching it out. And the financial benefits of it, I looked it up and I did not know that disengagement is a multi-billion dollar problem for just small businesses, just those people with under 20 employees. So we're not talking about giant international conglomerates that have to struggle with this and have to just pinch out a little bit more engagement to jump up their bottom line by a point and a half. This is a real issue that hits Main Street USA, not just Wall Street. And yeah. I mean, it is shocking when you see this.
So 3 things you just said. One is the size of the team. The smaller the team, the better, because you can actually be having these conversations with them. 2, they're the experts. So when you ask their opinion isn't, hey, it just theoretically, what do you think? They're the ones doing the job. So this is when we talk about going to the Gemba. If you want to ask what's going on, if you want to see how to improve things or do problem solving, talk to the team that's already doing those things. They're the experts, right? Which is huge. And then the third one is your alignment with your mission, right? What's that North Star? So this all plays into that, because I can't imagine any company that doesn't have if they're sitting down and providing a mission or vision for the company, and they're trying to align all the activities, which company would not say within there that they want an engaged workforce? Yeah. Or underlying what their mission and vision is, that the only way to get there would be with an engaged workforce.
Yeah. So you said earlier, and I agree with it, but I'd like to flip the script on it, so to speak. You said, hey, when it comes to selling a product, the number one expense, the number one thing to focus on is your cost of goods sold. Number 2 is your workforce, your inventory. That is always your biggest expense. And we know now, with minimum wage going up, with your overhead parts of workers' comp and all these other things going up, additional employee benefits, things like that, it is only more important. My point is that if everybody is measuring the first one, the key differentiator between what makes you good and what makes you great is that second one. So coming from a cutthroat industry of retail, whether it's retail and manufacturing or the service industry, it really doesn't matter. If everybody's measuring and using the same measurements and focusing on the key first part, if you can focus on that second part, that is a key differentiator for you and getting your business to succeed. And that creates the wow factor that blows customers away. So I think of it almost as the most important thing, because that first one should be foundational. That's just, hey, stay in business. It's almost like keep the doors open with your cost of goods sold, your inventory control, and some of the raw, easy numbers. You want to take it to the next level, you start investing in that next resource, that human resource.
Right. And I want to make sure that everyone, what I wasn't trying to imply, Brian, was that was the most important. What I was saying was it's your largest expense, typically.
Absolutely.
Cost of goods sold.
Absolutely.
And it is.
But let's focus on this. Let's be real. This is number one in almost all the businesses playbook. That's what the financial analysis analysts, they'll look at that. They want to see all these raw numbers. How many of them say, all right, well, I'd like to see the Gallup poll returns on your workforce? None of them are doing that. Why?
Right.
Because it is not concrete and there's too much variable. But that is where the real value lies. And I think you nailed it on that. And we need to be focusing more on this, especially as we devote more fiscal resources to the human resources.
Back into our last episode, Brian, we were talking about point of purchase and how if we get things to a point where we can help, we have our team helping the customer make a selection on the floor. So by the time they get to the point of purchase, I mean, they're out the door, right? So that automation takes care of that. Well, if you look at a lot of hardware stores or a lot of the product that's being sold, look at Amazon, it's all the same stuff. So when you look at cost of goods sold, unless you're a monster, a lot of your cost of goods sold, the cost per item is about the same. What differentiated? It's your team.
Yes.
That's a differentiator. So what I was trying to get at is we have all these metrics around cost of goods sold, inventory turn, obsolescence, all those things. But the very thing that's your differentiator that makes you a better company that helps you deliver on your mission and your vision is your team. And there's very few metrics other than cost, the cost of those employees. And this engagement survey is what, and again, this is such a simple approach to it, and a simple approach to starting to look at how to develop your leaders, is to say, this is how we're going to differentiate. This is how we're going to deliver on our mission and vision, our North Star, whatever the case may be. And these are things you can do today, tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
very, very quickly we can do that. The other cool thing then is, and I think we'll probably maybe have a guest in the future talk about this, but
yeah,
a lot of what we've talked about is in this episode is literally just tracking things on a piece of paper. How am I engaging with my team throughout the day, throughout the week? Well, what if you had a tool that could actually track that, help you track that, and then help you coach? And it was using AI to do it.
Yeah.
And so you and I had a great conversation,
and we have to save that for another episode.
Exactly right.
We got 2 minutes left, a minute and a half. Give me your key takeaways on this. What?
You're calling time on me?
I'm calling time on you because you call time on me.
We keep changing the game, man.
We're changing the name of this podcast episode. It is the episode of Retribution.
Yeah. Time's up, retribution. Exactly. All right, sorry, back to you.
I'm also on a unpadded stool in New York, and I am not. This is not comfortable. I'm hunched over. My microphone isn't where I want it to be. I'm not in my happy place, Mike.
I like your backdrop though.
Thank you.
It looks, you look like you're in like somewhere in central New York State, out in the woods.
Just put down my banjo. I had to put my teeth in. Never mind. Forget it.
Be nice.
I know. I'm from upstate New York. I can say it. So go ahead. What are some of your key takeaways on this, or the most important aspect?
So I think it is, if you're not measuring engagement, start. And again, you can start with a small team. It'll cost you $80. You can do the survey and you can start to get all this rich information from Gallup. Two, as soon as you get that information, or if you already have it, don't wait months to start to provide feedback to the team about how we're doing. And you should share how you're doing, and then start to talk about how can your leaders start to address this? And like I said, using the information from Gallup, but also using AI, ask AI based on low scores, how would you do leader standard work on a daily, weekly basis to address that? Then the third piece is, based on that leader standard work, how do I then get a chance to coach my leaders so they become better at doing those very things? So we're identifying opportunities in engagement. We're identifying behaviors that our leaders should start doing right away, and then we're coaching them on those behaviors on a daily basis.
Right.
Simple as that.
Right.
Simple as that.
And not to put a plug in for what I do, but I really think that you ask 3 simple questions. Hey, am I actively making my leadership team and the rest of the team authoritative, or am I hogging all the authority? Am I hogging the information so that I have that Superman, that Messiah complex? That goes to the wayside. Number 1, am I making sure that everybody is the authority and the expert? Number 2, am I making sure that they're communicating in an empathetic, other-centered way, right? So thinking about the receiver, not just themselves. And then number 3, am I holding them accountable with future information that they need to be taking in, and how it's being received? Just those 3 things. And then all of a sudden the burden kind of rests on you, not on them. It's not their fault. It's your responsibility as the leader, as the owner.